Hello, everybody. Ryan knows me pretty well, but for the other two of you, I'm Carol. I do work at the club, only I have been working from home as of late, so it's nice to see you. It's nice to see the club. It's nice to see Alexis. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about interview prep and how to get prepared for an interview. And Ryan, you've interviewed before, I believe, yes? Have the other two of you ever done an interview before? If you want to raise your hand if you have. Nope. Okay, first times. That's what the club is for, practicing first time stuff. So that's great. Okay, so Alexis got some supplies ready for us for today. And you should have a writing utensil and some sticky notes in front of you. Is that right? Yes? Yep, okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so what we are going to do, I am going to share my screen, and I have a presentation I'm going to show you guys. So, and before I get going, to let you guys know, my background is working with students, doing college and career counseling and job prep with students. So this is stuff I really, really like. All right, so I'm going to click share screen, and hopefully this works. Oh, the host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Uh-oh.
Hold on.
Alexis, is there a way to share a screen? Okay, awesome. I can hear closer to the computer than I can further away. So if someone closer to the computer can answer if I ask a question, or if you could move closer if needed. So interview prep. So what we're going to do, we're going to do a warm up first. We're going to think about something that you're probably not prepared to think about during an interview prep session. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of somebody that you admire. And it could be a staff member at the club. Maybe it's a relative, maybe it's a teacher or a coach, maybe it's someone at your church, maybe it's a neighbor. So I want you to think about one person. So I want you to take a minute and put somebody in your head that you admire. So for me, I will choose my friend Margie. So that's somebody that I admire. So could you guys give me a thumbs up when you've got somebody in your head that you're thinking of someone that you admire?
I can't think of I can think of various people, but I really cannot pick one.
Just choose one, Ryan. We just need one.
I can't. This is hard.
So now what I want you to do, when you think of that person that you think is a pretty awesome person, I want you to think of 3 things that you admire about that person. And I want you to write one thing on a Post-it note. So you're going to have 3 Post-it notes filled out. So an example of something that you could admire about somebody could be the way that they present themselves. It could be that they're a snazzy dresser, okay, or they've got great shoes, or they're very confident. It could be something that they do, like they're a good listener, they're a good friend, they're funny, they care about me. Or it could be something else that you might find admirable. It could be that they make a good choice or make good choices. Maybe they've got a lifestyle that you'd like. You know, I have a friend that drives a really great car. You know, maybe that's something I admire about that person. It could be that they're just a good role model. Maybe it's that they live somewhere that you want to live. Maybe you have a friend that lives in Hawaii and you want to live there. Maybe you have a friend that has a German Shepherd and you've always wanted a German Shepherd, okay? So think of 3 things, write one thing on each Post-it note. And then what you're going to do, I'm trying to write them big enough that Alexis can read them back to me and clear enough to do so. What you're going to do, and don't write down the name of the person. So if you did that, grab a new Post-it note. So you're not going to write down my friend Susan. Okay, we don't need to know who the person is. What we're looking for are those things that you admire about that person. Then I want you to put them, there should be some sheets of paper up somewhere in the room. And on those sheets of paper, they say 3 different things. One says presentation, one says actions, one says other. So if your thing that you admire about that person is something in the way they present themselves. They're kind. They're a good dresser. They are approachable. You know, that would be a presentation. If it's an action, put it under action. They're a listener. They're caring. They're smart. They're good at math, whatever it would be. And then if it's just an other, they have a pet that you want, or they are a good role model, or they have a nice family. You can put that in the other location. So write your 3 things and then put them on the Post-it note or the paper on the wall under the appropriate category. And I bet Alexis can help you figure out what category those things would go in. So, Alexis, if I could have you help me out. Can you please read to me what, if any, Post-its are under the presentation section?
Yep, I feel like man on white.
All right.
All right. So we have one under presentation, and it says always smiling.
Oh, that's perfect. Awesome. How about under actions or things people do?
Actions, we have they listen to me. Good listener.
Love.
Okay.
They make me happy and excited.
Do you have any that are duplicates?
Yeah, I'm skipping some of those.
Okay.
Or do you want me to read all of them?
No, are there more that say listeners or good listeners?
2.
Okay. Alrighty, keep going.
Spends time with me.
Oh, awesome.
Helpful to everyone. Loyal. Good person or loyal. Did I put in parentheses? Inspire others.
Ooh.
Make other people smile. I don't know if I said that one.
That's great.
Very interactive.
Perfect.
And we bike together.
Awesome. And do we have any for just other?
That was where we have the Ryan admires their careers.
Okay.
I didn't know if that went in other maybe.
That's okay. That's great.
Okay. Nice work, guys.
You guys, that's an excellent list. And I think, you know, if I was that person you were writing things about, that would make me feel so incredibly good. So it's awesome that there's people in your lives that you recognize those awesome attributes and they make you feel a certain way or you see them in a certain light. So as we look at that list, I think that looking at some common themes are the good people, that they are good friends, that they listen and they help and they make people smile, they inspire other people. Those are just fantastic things to have in a friend. But they're also fantastic things to have in an employee. So all of these different things that you came up with, all those Post-it notes that you came up with are things that you yourself can demonstrate in an interview. So how do you think you could show something like this in an interview?
How can we show one of those things, or being a good listener, or being helpful, or
Can be very helpful by writing down your volunteer.
you could be helpful by showing them writing down the volunteer work experiences you've had, is what Abby said.
Awesome. Yep, you can be helpful by completing your application completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can be loyal by having people that like those recommendations. There are people that are loyal.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear that?
Yes, so having good relationships with people that could be recommenders for you and that could show your loyalty, absolutely. And a simple one, smiling. That is so important in an interview. And twice on here on this list, you guys recognize that people you admire smile. So it doesn't mean we have to smile all the time. It doesn't mean we have to be happy all the time. We aren't. But in an interview, a smile can go a long way. So you guys did a great job. Okay, we're going to get a little bit into the nitty-gritty now. So there are different types of interviews. And the different types of interviews, you know, an easy one, an in-person interview where you are in the same room. It would be like Alexis interviewing you right now for a job. There are interviews that are one-on-one, so it's just one interviewer and one interviewee, and you have a conversation. But then there's interviews where it's more of a group situation, and there may be multiple people that are conducting the interview, and you're in the room with them. So I have been in situations where they have been one-on-one. I've been in situations where I've interviewed with as many as like 15 people at once. So there's different types. For at the club here, if it was more than one person interviewing you, it would not be 15. It would maybe be 2. There's something called a rotational interview, which is really weird, and you're not going to do it here, but maybe in the future you would. If you happen to remember staff member Andrew from a few years ago, he used to work in the summers. He had to do a rotational interview for college. He applied for a resident assistant job where you live on your floor in your dormitory and you're kind of in charge of the kids on your floor and you help solve problems for them and you're a resource for them. And so he interviewed for a job doing that, and it was a rotational interview where he sat at a table for like 5 minutes and interviewed with somebody, and a timer rang and he got up and went to another table and sat with that person for a few minutes, and a timer rang, and then he went to another table and interviewed with somebody else. And so there are all these people moving at once, all kinds of people getting interviewed, going to different tables at once. He said it was the weirdest, different type of a way of interviewing. Sometimes you have to go to lunch or dinner for an interview. I've had to do that too. So that's a little bit nerve-wracking too, to have somebody that's interviewing for you for a job watching you eat. And then also like a phone interview, or even now, online interviews. I've done Skype interviews before. There's Zoom interviews now. There's all kinds of things because we're not in person as much. So
Google Meet's interviews won't be bad, because I've done Google Meet.
Yep, Google Meet could be another way that people would do an interview, absolutely.
I would do it.
And I've done interviews where I was interviewing out of state. So I was sitting in Wisconsin on my computer, and I was interviewing with somebody in Michigan for a position in Michigan, and I never had to travel there for the interview. So it can be helpful to do things digitally as well. So you guys don't have a lot of experience with professional paid jobs, and that's totally okay.
I have a lot of experience.
Yep, okay, good. And I mean, we have different levels of experience. But a lot of times as a teen, as a middle school or high school student, you don't have a ton of experience going into the job or the workforce. So that's okay. There are plenty of things that don't require any talent that can be applicable to a job. So easy things that you guys can do, being on time. Right now with school, I know it's crazy with school, but being on time for your classes matters, right? Being on time for school matters. Being on time for your job matters too. Sometimes there's things beyond your control. Maybe the roads are bad and your bus gets stuck, or maybe you're sick and you have to call in. But really, on a daily basis, we should be on time for our jobs. So that's a very important thing that you don't need any experience to do. You can be on time without having any talent associated with it. Having a good work ethic, meaning you want to be there. You are going to do your best for your hour or 2 hours or 5 hours or whatever it is that you are working during that time. That you're demonstrating that the job matters to you.
And Carol, I'm already seeing that. I'm already seeing that out of our 2 junior staff applicants right now. They've been really adamant about being at these meetings and having a good time over there. So I appreciate it from you too so far. So keep it
awesome. Yeah, and that matters. Even though you're not hired yet, that definitely matters because people see this stuff. Your program staff see how you're interacting at the club, if you're volunteering to do any leadership things, or if you're actually just following through with going to a meeting, that matters, or going to a presentation. So that's demonstrating your work ethic and effort at the same time. So putting effort towards your job, trying, not just showing up and being a warm body in a room, but actually trying to do the tasks that you have to do for your job. Your body language matters. If I gave this presentation today and I was like this the whole time, do you think that I would think that this matters? No. Is this professional looking? If I sigh and slump my shoulders, that's not great body language. No. So your body language at work matters. It doesn't mean that you have to be super professional all the time. Sometimes different situations call for different things. Sometimes you have to be silly because you're playing a game. But your body language matters. How you carry yourself matters, because you can show with your body and with your facial expressions how you feel about being there in that moment. And realize that even if you've had a long day and maybe you woke up late, maybe you got in a fight with your mom and school didn't go great, you are at the club, and it is a place that is yours, that belongs to our members and our staff and our community. It is a place that you can make fun, and it's a place where you're going to have a job to do for a set amount of time, and you need to show up and kind of take a deep breath and realize maybe the day hasn't been going great, but you need to put on your game face for being at work, and you need to do the best job that you can. And that includes having positive body language when you're at work. Your energy level, that matters. So, I mean, as always, we need to get as much sleep as we can, but we need to be energetic at work. We can't be sluggish. Having a good attitude, being passionate, trying to have fun, even if it's not your most favorite thing, you try hard because you're a role model to other kids that are at the club. And that matters too. So trying to show some passion for what you're doing. And this one I love, being coachable. And my example is my daughter, who's fantastic. I love her dearly. And she's played softball for a number of years. And she likes it, but she's not the best kid on a team. But what I tell her all the time is, you don't have to be the best. But if you can listen to your coaches and follow their directions, you're going to be good, because you can be coachable. That means following instructions from your supervisor or from other staff and being willing to say, oh, I don't know how to do that. Will you show me? Or when someone says to you, hey, I need you to do it this way, and you follow their instructions, that matters. You don't have to be the best, but if you can follow directions, you're doing great. And if you can, do extra. If you've got it in you, if you've got the time, go above and beyond a little bit. And also just being prepared for being at work. For me today, when I got prepared, I put on my club shirt, I put on my name tag, because that's part of my uniform essentially for working, even though I'm at home. And the only people here right now are my kids, and they know my name. They don't need to see my name tag. But presenting to you today, that's part of being prepared for me. I made sure that my computer was charged. I made sure that I had my presentation printed out. I had my headphones. So being prepared really matters as well. And all of this stuff can be applied to an interview. Any questions before I move on? Okay.
Seems to me we don't have any questions
Some
right
basics on interviewing. Are we good?
Yep.
Okay. So first impressions matter. A first impression is what somebody thinks the first time they see you. So your first impression for applying for a job can start the minute that you walk into a business and pick up an application. It can start when you drop off an application. So, we all have at the club, they know you already. So it's not like you're forming a first impression. However, when you go to your interview, it matters how you are at that interview. If you are showing up and you haven't brushed your hair and you didn't brush your teeth that morning and your clothes are a little bit cattywampus, that matters. You want to kind of show the best self that you can. So that means brush your teeth and put on something that you feel comfortable in, but is appropriate and clean. Being on time. So if you have an interview scheduled for 4:00 in the afternoon at the club, you make sure you're watching the clock. So if you are in the games room hanging out with your friends and you forget that it's your interview, or you go in late, that kind of ruins that first impression for you. So that's important too. Also, what to bring. When you go to an interview, for you guys, what might be helpful is to just bring a pencil or a pen and maybe like a little notebook, because during the interview you might learn something about the junior staff position and you can write it down so you can remember it later. If you interview later when you're older at another job somewhere, let's say it's at Subway, it is always helpful to bring a writing utensil and a notebook to write questions or to write down facts that you need to know. If you have a copy of your application, it's nice to have that with you as well. You don't have to have a copy of it, you might not, but if you do, it's nice to have that. So be prepared in research. For the club, you probably don't have to do too much research, but you might want to walk around and talk to some of the program staff and say, hey, so in the past, what have junior staff done in this area? Or if a junior staff helping you, what are you going to want them to be doing? Okay, it's nice to find out about that job a little bit. If you are applying somewhere else, let's say you are going to apply at Triggs grocery store. Well, you probably need to find out a little bit about the job. So that means maybe going online and checking out to see if they have a job posting listed online. Learn about that job before you interview. Even if you've applied already and you haven't read it very closely, you need to read about that. Possibly find out how old do you have to be to interview there. So do a little bit of that research. We talked about body language already, and nonverbal communication. That's going to be things like facial expressions, sighs, rolling your eyes. Don't do that at an interview. Whew, that would be bad news. So just be aware of how you present yourself in that interview, even when you're not talking. This is a lot of information, and it sounds silly for me to say, stay relaxed and be yourself when I'm telling you to watch all these other things that you're doing, but really you do want to show who you are in the interview. So as nervous as you will be, try your best to take some deep breaths and to try to remember that you want to just show them who you are and that you're awesome. So try to be as relaxed as you can. And practice. Practice makes perfect, but practice also makes it not so bad. So you practice with your mirror. Practice answering questions in front of a mirror. Practice with a friend at the club. Ask a program staff member to help you prepare for an interview. Practice with a parent. Whatever it takes. Maybe it's just thinking of questions and writing down answers to yourself. It's okay to practice. I have practiced in mirrors before. I have practiced with my sister on the phone for interviews. It helps make you feel more comfortable for when the interview actually takes place. Any questions about this section at all? All right, you guys are doing good. So, what will you be asked? These are not necessarily questions you will be asked here for program staff or for junior staff, but these are some basic ones that are asked a lot in interviews, especially in interviews for first jobs. So tell me about yourself. When somebody asks, tell me about yourself, you're not going to start off with your whole life history. So if someone asks me, Carol, tell me about yourself, I'm not going to say, well, I was born at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Appleton, Wisconsin. I grew up on Parkway. That's not what they want to know, okay? I want you to take some time. Whenever you're asked a question, you can take a moment to gather your thoughts, but not too much time. I've been an interviewer where somebody has thought for minutes on end before they answered a question, and that doesn't give a good impression. So take a second or two to collect your thoughts, and then you can answer the question. So tell me about yourself. What you want to do here is talk a little bit about maybe what grade you're in, what school you go to, what subjects you like, why you're a club member, what are your favorite things to do at the club. Those are things that you can answer about. Tell me about yourself. What are your hobbies? Those are great things. Why do you want to work here? So think about, why do you want to become junior staff? Is it to get some work experience? Is it because some of the people that you admire are program staff? Is it because the club means a lot to you? Is it because you know in 3 years or 2 years you're going to need to get a summer job? And you want to be prepared for that and have some skills. Maybe it's you want to give back to the club. There's lots of reasons. So think about why you want to work there. What are your strengths? What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses are two of the hardest questions that I've I have worked with students on. Students are always nervous about answering what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. So in strengths, interviews are weird. You have to brag about yourself. It's kind of an odd time to talk about how great you are, but that's what an interview is. So if you talk about your strengths, are you a good listener? Let's think back to those wonderful things that we wrote on Post-it notes about people you admire. Are you kind? Are you on time? Are you a good friend? Are you organized? Maybe you are really outgoing. Maybe you make friends easily. And then weaknesses. Don't say, I don't have any, or I don't know. So if you're going to take some homework away from today, I want you to think about what are your weaknesses, and let's rephrase it as, what is something that you want to work on to improve? A lot of times, students and adults will say, public speaking. I get really nervous talking in front of groups of people. That's something I'm going to work on. Okay? So don't say it's something I'm just bad at. Talk about it in a way of, that's something I want to improve about myself. So myself, I struggled with public speaking. Oops, I'm touching my mic. I struggled with public speaking for a long time, and I'd get really nervous and have to wear a scarf around my neck because I'd get really red on my neck when I was talking, and I'd get very sweaty, and I would stutter through what I was presenting. And it got better with time, but I also practiced a lot. So a weakness could be maybe you procrastinate. Maybe when you get homework assignments, you wait until the very last day to get them done. Maybe your organization could use some help. It could be like your room is a mess, or it could be you need to figure out a different way to keep track of what you have to do for school. So can you guys think of a weakness that you'd want to work on? What is something you want to work on to improve about yourself? Anybody got an example?
Resolving conflicts was an example.
Perfect. Okay. So if you were to answer, a weakness I have is resolving conflicts, I will guarantee that you're going to get a follow-up from the interview that says, well, what are you doing about that? Or how are you going to work on that? So I want you to think about how you're working to better resolve conflicts. Okay. So that's homework for you. Anybody else?
Something you want to work on getting better at.
Saying my strengths.
What was that?
Saying my strengths.
Being able to say your strengths? Saying strengths? So like recognizing strengths within yourself?
Yep.
I don't have any.
Yep. Being confident in your strengths. Yep. Absolutely. All right, Ryan. So your job is you need to think about it, okay? Because we all have things to work on. Even the most experienced of us have things that we can work on. I bet if I also give you guys the assignment to go around and ask staff at the building what are things that they want to work on to improve themselves, you're going to get tons of answers. Okay, so it's never a bad thing to have weaknesses. Another question you may be asked is, tell me about a time you faced conflict at work in school. How did you deal with it? So if you have trouble dealing with conflict, you might have an example, but you're going to have some type of resolution with it too. So let's say you got in a disagreement in the club with a friend of yours. How did you deal with that? How did you resolve it? And then how do you deal with stress? That's a common question that is asked too. And that can be at home. It could be at the club. It could be with friends. It could be because of schoolwork. It could be because of COVID. How do you deal with a stressful situation? Do you try to get active? Do you take some quiet time? Do you read? Do you take a nap? Do you write about it? Do you talk to a friend? So think of answers to those types of questions. You are essentially trying to sell yourself as the best candidate, okay? You're the product and you're trying to get that employer to want you, to want to get you. So you're kind of giving them your sales pitch. So when you get asked questions, you want to answer them to the best of your ability. If you get asked a question, it could be one of these or a different one, and you didn't quite understand it, or they said it really fast, or you just need a few more minutes to think of your answer, it is totally okay to say, I'm sorry, can you please repeat that question? And have them repeat it for you. I've been in interviews where people have taken that pen and their paper, and when they're asked questions, especially difficult ones that are multiple parts, they've written down the question quick. So then they can look at it while they're answering, and it helps their brain figure out, oh, these are points I want to say. So whatever makes you comfortable in that situation. All right, so the next one, there are 3 of you, and I need 3 volunteers. So you guys have all volunteered yourselves. Yay! It's easy. But could I get somebody, Alexis, can you tell me who the #1 volunteer will be? What's going to happen is I'm going to ask you a silly question, and I want to hear your response. So this is, it is a weird or unexpected interview question, and I want you to do your best to answer in a professional way, even though it's going to be a really, really weird question. So who can go first?
Abby will go first.
Abby, thank you. All right, are you ready? I'm going to read the question, and then when you reply, try to talk as loud as you can so I can hear you, okay? Here's your question, Abby. This question comes from Amazon, the online company. How would you solve problems if you were from Mars?
I'll probably put on anti-gravity and write it down.
I'm sorry, Alexis, can you say that? She's just so
Abby
far.
said that I would probably put on some anti-gravity boots and then write down ways to solve it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So that is a weird question. I don't know that you'll encounter a question like that anywhere. What Amazon is doing is they are looking for their potential employees to think outside of the box. So if you are from if you were from Mars and you had to solve a question or solve a problem, you're not going to necessarily think like you would here on Earth. So, but what you did was you figured out what you would need to solve that problem. So you need those anti-gravity boots so you don't float away, and then you'll figure out what to do next. Good job. All right, who's next?
Ryan.
No,
Ryan. Or
Ryan, you're up next.
no.
Ryan.
No.
Ryan, this is a good one. You can do this. If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be and why?
I'm gonna say I don't know.
Oh, choose a tree, Brian.
I don't know. I said I don't know.
Okay.
Tree or an oak tree or a Christmas tree?
I don't know.
Maple tree?
There's no wrong answer.
Spruce tree?
Yes, I'd be maple tree because I want to make people eat me.
There you go.
Okay,
You
so
can
you want to be a
tree
Make people
Awesome.
eat me.
so that people
Well-
can use this to eat.
well, they wouldn't eat you. They would eat the syrup, the sap that you provide, right?
That's what I eat.
So you could provide people with something.
That's awesome.
Tree's one.
So that weird question is actually asked by Walgreens to employees sometimes. And this one is asking for creativity. So it can kind of help a company learn a little bit about your strengths and what kind of person you are. So Ryan, with your answer, I want to be a maple tree so I could provide for people. Well, that shows that you're caring and you care about other people. If somebody said, I want to be an oak tree because I'm strong and dependable, that shows, that type of personality that person has. So you did a great job, Ryan. All right, here's the last one. You ready, Deacon?
Yeah.
All right, get your creative hat on. What do you think of garden gnomes? Do you know what a garden gnome is? Little figurines that sit in gardens. So what do you think of them?
They're cool.
Why?
Why?
Because they're always sitting by a garden.
Because they're always sitting by a garden.
They're cool because they're always sitting by a garden. Good job. So that weird question was asked by Trader Joe's. It's a grocery store. We don't have one here locally, but they're in Madison and Milwaukee.
Maybe.
And this is just a super silly question used to kind of loosen somebody up during an interview. So it's a question to kind of make you feel a little bit more comfortable when you're in an interview and maybe show them a little bit of your personality. So, you seem pretty relaxed. You like them because they're cool and they get to hang out by the garden. And that's great. It's just sometimes you might get a strange question that throws you off a little bit, but the employer just wants to see how do you handle something that's a little out of left field. You guys all did a fantastic job. Now, we are running out of time, but and we're not going to do this part, but what you have, did Alexis give you a handout about interviewing? That was upside down, interviewing and questions to ask?
Yep, they have it.
Okay, this is a great resource for you. This is what I want you to use when you are practicing for your interview at the club. So there are questions, sample questions of what you might be asked when you're interviewing. There's also questions listed under what can I ask? As a candidate, somebody who's interviewing for a job, you absolutely can ask questions. I love asking questions during interviews because it lets me know what that employer is like. It lets me find out more about the work environment and the job duties. So it's great to ask questions. You can ask questions about, like, who will train me? What's a typical workday like? What are the job duties? What comes next after the interview? Okay, so use these questions, and there's some great tips on here about all the things we talked about, body language and dressing appropriately and being prepared. So this is a great tool for you. A lot of times in an interview, at the very end, the interviewer will ask you, well, do you have any questions for us? And that's where the what can I ask comes in very much in handy for you. So it is okay to have questions. If you really can't think of anything, you can say, not at this time, but I really, really encourage you to think of at least one thing that you can ask at the end of your interview. And finally, after an interview, it is totally, totally appropriate and awesome to send a thank you note or a thank you email to somebody that interviewed you. So maybe at the club, after you've done an interview, find a thank you card. They have them at the club if you need some, or you can type an email, or you can maybe write something and print it up. But send a thank you to the people that interviewed you. It helps them remember you. It's part of good email or good interview etiquette, and it shows how interested you really are in that position. So when I interview for jobs, I always sent a thank you email or card afterwards to thank that person for their time, to tell them it was really great meeting them, and I really enjoyed learning about the job, and I look forward to hearing from them in the future. And sometimes I'll say, and if you have any more questions, please reach out to me. So sending a brief thank you after an interview is the last step of that interview process. You guys were awesome. You answered weird questions on the fly. You did an activity. You thought a little bit about attributes of people that you admire. And those are all things that you can use in your own interviews. Do we have any questions? We're at 4:30.
What do we say to Carol?
Thanks.
Thanks, and we'll be getting to see Carol again in February. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Carol.
Yep. And I'll have more presentation stuff. You guys were awesome. And if you have questions later, you're welcome to reach out to me or have Alexis reach out to me. So have a great day, you guys.
Perfect. Time for dinner. We'll see you later.